So this past weekend, Thor Ragnarok came out, and I've been in the mood to talk Marvel movies and Marvel characters, and today we're going to spend some time talking about the Hulk. Now, the Hulk's actually had quite a bit of time in front of the screen. So back in the 70s, there was a TV show that debuted with Bill Bixby and Lou Ferrigno, and then he did 3 TV movies based off that version of the Hulk. Then, of course, during the Zeros, we got 2 more movies, and then currently we got Mark Ruffalo in the role. So there's been a lot of Hulk that's been in front of the screen, and a lot of it's been pretty good. A lot of it's been pretty bad, and that's what we're going to talk about today, the good and the bad. Now, before I dive into my full thoughts on it, be sure to put your thoughts down below in the comment section, how you rank our different renditions of the Hulk. But also, here's the grid I'm going to use. Best based off of the Bruce Banner, or the Banner, because David Banner is the character in the TV show, the Hulk, the quality of the show or the movies, and how iconic each of the different versions are. So when I'm rating it, I'm going to go by the Bruce Banner, the Hulk, the quality in general, and how iconic it is. So as you give me your thoughts down below in the comment section, let me know who's the most iconic in your mind. What's the best quality? Who's the best Hulk? What's the best Bruce Banner? Tell me all of that down below in the comment section. I would love to see your take on all of it. Also, over on Twitter, I normally put up some Twitter polls whenever I kind of do these sorts of ranking videos, and so please follow me over there. I put one up, who's the best Hulk, and pretty distinctly Mark Ruffalo was the champion over there, and I wasn't surprised by that. That's not surprising. The internet really likes Mark Ruffalo in that role. All right, with that said, I'm going to start talking about our Hulks. And I'm going to start off by just kind of crowning some awards on here for each of these different categories. I'm going to go with which one I think is the best, and then break down each one of our different Hulks at the different points in time and why they're different qualities of goodness. So I'll start off with the iconic, and the one that I think is by far the most iconic Hulk that we've ever seen. You have to go with Lou Ferrigno. Now, of course, people like Mark Ruffalo. There's some iconic moments with Mark Ruffalo's Hulk and the smashing of Loki and the destruction of buildings and stuff like that. But it's a CGI guy. I mean, the actual character himself is CGI, and it's modern day CGI type stuff going on. Some funny moments. I'm a huge fan. We're going to talk about that in just a moment. But as for an iconic piece of TV movie history that people know, Hulk. When they think the Hulk, they think Lou Ferrigno. He's still doing voice work for the Hulk. People still call him the Hulk. It's been almost like we're almost at 40 years, and Lou Ferrigno is still the Hulk, and it was just a guy picking stuff up, looking very Hulkish. So when it comes to just being iconic, just making a mark on popular culture, maybe 20 years from now, this Mark Ruffalo CGI Hulk will take the cake. But as for right now, I think you just absolutely have to go Lou Ferrigno. By far is the most iconic of the Hulks that we have had up to this point in time. From there, let's go to our categories and go then from there to our banner. So in the TV show, it was actually David Banner was the character. They changed the character a little bit, gave him a different story. And then Bruce Banner is typically the character. It's definitely not Eric Bana. I didn't think that Edward Norton was too bad. But I think if you go for who is our best Bruce Banner or David Banner between the two of them, I think you got to go Mark Ruffalo. And I love Bill Bixby. It's kind of pretty close for me. I kind of grew up with the old show. But I think you have to go Mark Ruffalo. He's a great actor. And he brings something to where you believe that he is this, you really believe he's a weird, quirky scientist that's smart. And then you also see kind of a personality to him. You see a guy struggling with his emotions and character, bringing a humor to it. There's just a lot that he brings to it that you didn't know that you wanted from Bruce Banner. Because we've seen Bruce Banner, all the previous Bruce Banners have just kind of been like a good guy, a nice guy, a smart guy, but not necessarily an interesting guy. And Bill Bixby would be the closest to an interesting Banner that we got before, and that he just kind of felt like a nice dad that was a superhero that turned into the Hulk. And with Ruffalo, you get a character that's kind of interesting and has layers and different stuff kind of going on with him. So I would give it to Mark Ruffalo. And now, what is the best Hulk that we've had? And I give the iconicness to our Lou Ferrigno, but because of the limitations of what you can do when you only had a TV show budget and a man picking things up, Think you gotta go with this CGI Mark Ruffalo as the best Hulk. They just found the right way to use him and give him these amazing moments. And because of that, I gotta go Mark Ruffalo, CGI Hulk guy. I mean, just the stuff that they did in the Avengers, the situations they can have, and him battling at Captain America, Thor, the Hulkbuster armor. It's just kind of the dream come true. It is the comic book brought to life. That's what they've been able to do with the current era of CGI, with where they're at, the scenarios, and the way they decided to use Hulk in the MCU post Incredible Hulk. I gotta go with CGI Mark Ruffalo. They have nailed it with him. Then from there, just overall quality in general of things, you gotta go Mark Ruffalo again. And that goes back to knowing where the character shines and how the nature of storytelling and the limitations of certain types of characters. And when you do a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde character where the Dr. Jekyll or Mr. Hyde is so powerful and just so domineering and so dumb and reckless and crazy, and that's the exciting part of it. It makes for difficult storytelling without a set of characters around them, and the MCU figured that out after the Incredible Hulk, and then they've now used him in different contexts of these other characters, and that's where he's used wonderfully in Thor Ragnarok and then the Avengers movies, where he has people to play off of to drive the narrative. When he's the Hulk, there's still other characters that keep it interesting that become the leads. And so just an overall quality, I think you got to go in that direction with him. With that said, I'm just going to go through and break down each of them, rank our 4 different versions of him. Coming in at number 4 is going to be poor Eric Bana in Ang Lee's 2003 Hulk. I rewatched this movie yesterday. I mean, I've seen it several times over the years. It'd been a little bit. I was like, I need to rewatch this one before I can talk about it intelligently. And it's a very weird, bad movie. It's not good, but it is ambitious. It actually goes for things. It tries to do things. The problem isn't that they just played it safe. The problem isn't that they just did this direct adaptation. No, I mean, Ang Lee has such a distinct vision for what he was doing. It's all ambitious. It's all creative. And it was the thought of how do you take a comic book and put it on the screen and make it feel like a comic book? That's an interesting idea. And they went for it. They shouldn't have, but they went for it, and we learned this doesn't really work very well. And that's kind of what this movie feels like. It came out almost 15 years ago, before the MCU, before the Dark Knight trilogy, at a point in time where, in a certain sense, we hadn't had that many comic book movies. Like the Sam Raimi ones were very much Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies. The X-Men movies were successful, and we had those. And then we kind of had a decade of Batman movies that ended up going wacky with those campy Joel Schumacher ones. And you had Superman movies 15 years before this. So there hadn't been nearly as many movies, and we were trying to crack the code of how do you translate comic book characters to the screen in a way that really resonates with people. And Ang Lee, every single guy in this movie just overcooks the anger, and it's great actors, just so intense all the time with this anger, and then this weird existential freaky cloud. He became what his dad wanted to be because his dad injected himself, and then his dad becomes everything that he touches in his pursuit of, like, all these weird sorts of ideas that you can see that in a writer's room they were like, yeah, this is a cool idea, like give meaning to it and have metaphors within the story. End result, not good. Not good. So let's run down our 4 things. Bruce Banner, played by Eric Bana. I like Eric Bana. Weird casting, because you think Bruce Banner, you think the Banner character, he's supposed to be kind of like a smaller, nerdy scientist-looking guy. And one of the first lines in this movie to Eric Bana is a guy like, oh man, you're so nerdy looking, like you look ridiculous. Did you wear that helmet when you met up with like that's the initial lines to it, and you're watching it thinking, Eric Bana, the guy being picked on, looks 5 times as handsome as the guy calling him nerdy, and looks less nerdy than the nerdy guy calling him nerdy. Like this, I'm not buying this whole idea of Eric Bana as this nerdy, like shriveled up little scientist guy, because he's not. Like, right, like I think the year after this movie came out, he's like this big brave warrior guy in Troy. So clearly he's not shriveled up little weak guy. And so just the casting of him as Banner is very odd. And I like him as an actor, but between Ang Lee having all the guys overcook the anger and the fact that he just seems very miscast as nerdy Bruce Banner leads us to some problems. As for our Hulk, even though it's 14-year-old CGI, about 75% of it holds up. It's not horrible. Like, it doesn't, you're watching a CGI big green monster, but then there's about 25% that kind of works. And they try to do this thing where he's super strong so he can jump super high. My wife was watching it with me. She's like, why is the Hulk flying? I was like, no, he's not flying. He's jumping. He's really strong. Yeah, it looks like he's flying. This is stupid. And it's like, okay, yeah, it's pretty stupid. But there's things in it that aren't too bad, but there's nothing great in this. I mean, there's not a whole lot of amazing Hulk action, primarily because they didn't come up with a good villain for him to fight, and so it's him punching water, clouds, and helicopters. So, yeah, not a lot of good Hulk stuff in here, though it doesn't look horrible. Overall quality, as I just said, it's not good. It's just not a good movie. Ambitions in the wrong direction, ideas that didn't pay off, that did not work. We learned, don't do that from this movie. But, I mean, great cast, great director, trying something that it's just doesn't come together. And iconic, it's more infamous than iconic. People talk about it, but normally in a bad sense. And largely because you just look at the budget they had, the cast that they had, and Oscar-winning Ang Lee directing it, and then you get the movie and you're like, ooh, this is a little bit weird. So more infamous, definitely not iconic, unless you want to call it iconic in its infamy. Definitely an easy number 4 for poor Eric Bana and Ang Lee. Coming in at number 3, I'm going to go with our 70s and 80s business with Bill Bixby and Lou Ferrigno. So now I grew up with, this is one of those shows that was just kind of on TV. The era when I was growing up, we didn't have this whole era of comic book movies, comic book TV shows. We had some cartoons, either X-Men cartoon, Batman the Animated Series, some great ones. But as for live action, there wasn't a ton of stuff going on. And so this was one of those TV shows that back in the day was a huge hit. Now I watched the reruns going on TV. And it's a TV show of its age, of its era, in that it followed a fairly common template of older TV shows. You saw it on The Fugitive, you saw it on Kung Fu, you see it here, of a person with a certain skill set of sorts on the run and helping people in a new location each week to week. So it's very dated. If you're like 15 years old and going, oh, I like the Hulk, I'll go check out this old TV show. If you like old TV shows, you might like it. If you don't tend to like old TV shows, you won't like it. It's very much a product of its time, and that's something I grew up with, so I have a lot of nostalgia for it. There's a lot of things in it that I think really are quite good and handled well, but it's very much a product of its time. And the TV show's better than the later movies. The later movies, they tried to like put Thor into the Incredible Hulk Returns. I actually watched that one yesterday and getting ready for this, and it's not good. It's really bad. And then they did the Trial of the Incredible Hulk with Daredevil in it, and Daredevil works better than Thor did. Thor was bad. Daredevil was like, okay, you're trying something. Maybe this could have worked if you'd done a TV show out of it. I think they were trying to test the waters to see if they wanted to do a TV show. And then they did the Death of the Incredible Hulk, which spoiler alert, the title kind of gives a little bit away there. So, but anyway, if you go through the Bruce Banner, Bill Bixby's very good at David Banner. He just gives off this dad vibe. He doesn't give off this heroic vibe. He gives off a good guy that's of all of them. He definitely gives off the impression that this guy could be like a nerdy scientist guy that's just decent. So Bruce Banner, very good. Bill Bixby handles that role very wonderfully. As for the Hulk, most iconic Hulk, obviously, because it's Lou Ferrigno, it's an actual guy doing stuff, so it looks real. You don't have any shots where you're like looking at it and I'm looking at a cartoon like you did with 25% of Ang Lee's Hulk. So I like that. But the limitation of the fact that it's Lou Ferrigno picking things up and bending things, there's only so much you can do. And also it's a lot of him like bending a metal bar and stuff like that. Yeah, that's the limitations of it. As for the quality in general, as I said, it's a product of its time. That's kind of what it is. It's an old 70s, early 80s TV show of a specific style, kind of genre of sorts, subgenre. And if you like it, you like it, and you might check it out and not like it at all. I think it does what it's trying to do well. It doesn't look unbelievably insanely 70s in certain senses. Like there's a Spider-Man live action TV show from the 70s and a Captain America TV movie type things from the 70s that are just totally unwatchable. This is watchable, but it has a lot of limitations in what they could do. And so it's for a specific group of people. And for iconic, I would say this is the most iconic. At least Lou Ferrigno. Lou Ferrigno is the most iconic of the bunch. In particular, if there was an actor playing in the MCU, not just CGI, Edward Norton and Mark Ruffalo, then perhaps we'd have a different conversation. But when it's just kind of a CGI monster doing stuff, it's hard to say that CGI thing is iconic. Lou Ferrigno is the Hulk, and probably because they're always going to do CGI Hulk henceforth, Lou Ferrigno probably is always going to be the most iconic of the bunch. Before we move on to my top 2 Hulks, you know which ones are going to fall where. I want to talk about the number one way that you can support my channel, and that's over on Patreon. That's a community where you can directly support my channel financially, and if you do that, you gain access to some exclusive content, input into future videos, some discussions, behind the scenes, a bunch of cool fun stuff like that, just for people that want to go that extra mile, that like my channel, want to help make things happen. And because of my Patreon supporters, that's why I've been able to kind of upgrade some stuff on my channel and get some of these lights in proper lights. If you watch some of my videos from summer 2017, like on bright red because I didn't have good lighting, and so there's all sorts of wacky stuff that went on. And because of my patrons, I was able to upgrade, do some of this lighting stuff behind me, build new sets. And that's because people went, hey, I like this guy's channel. I want to help him go that extra mile. If you're interested in doing that, joining that community, getting that exclusive content and that input, go to the link down below. Consider supporting me over there. With all that said, let's get back to the Hulk. Coming in at number 2 is going to be Edward Norton. Now, I feel like the Edward Norton Hulk, that movie and all of it in general, is fine. I don't have any major issues with Edward Norton or the movie itself. But there's also nothing that just makes me get me really excited. Nothing iconic, nothing just amazing. It's just a bunch of stuff like, that's good enough. Yeah, that's a lot better than that movie that came out a few years ago. This is definitely watchable. This is a good movie. But that's kind of it. Edward Norton, who is a great actor, does a good job playing a fairly straight-laced version of the character, but he doesn't bring anything that makes him specifically memorable, specifically interesting. He's just kind of a good actor playing a somewhat dull scientist-y type character. So because it's modern era and CGI and there's an incredible fight with the Abomination at the end, he can come ahead of Bill Bixby and the limitations of that TV show, but he doesn't hit the heights of necessarily where things could go. So let's walk through this. As a Bruce Banner, Edward Norton is good, likable, but there's just no spark. There's nothing nothing about him that makes him memorable amongst all of them. In a certain sense, he's kind of the most forgettable of the bunch for me because Eric Bana just seems so miscast in overcooking the anger side of it that's interesting at least. It's not good, but it's interesting. And Bill Bixby is kind of a legend as playing David Banner. And then Mark Ruffalo's done such a good job bringing all these new layers and the humor and the dynamic and rapport with the other people. And then Edward Norton, it's like, oh yeah, that's right. Edward Norton was in an MCU movie early on, just one, and then gotten all sorts of issues with him. And so in that sense, he's kind of forgettable. The Hulk, as for what we've gotten, it's just as good to me as the stuff that we got from later on from Mark Ruffalo. Like, as just a continuation, it's not like this was crappy Hulk and then we got good Hulk with when it moved along to Mark Ruffalo's CGI and with the Avengers. Now they got to do new things, different things, but I mean the stuff that goes on in this movie, like he's putting like boxing glove cards on his hands as he fights Abomination, and there's like chains spinning around with Abomination. That's a cool thing that they were able to do in that. So I think this stuff for the Hulk easily is a very close number 2 to Mark Ruffalo. Mark Ruffalo's gotten to do several different movies and bigger things and unique things that they wrote specifically to have incredible Hulk moments. But what they did with the Hulk in this one, I thought was giving us some nice variety, 3 different settings of Hulk doing Hulk type things, including fighting a big monster. So I really liked the Hulk in this one, and I thought about giving him a tie with Mark Ruffalo's, but Mark Ruffalo got some of those more funny moments in the Smash and Loki back and forth stuff. So he comes out ahead. As for overall general quality of the movie, TV show, and all that fun stuff and what they were able to do, like I said, it's good. It's good. It's good enough. If you've seen my rankings of the MCU, you might be like, but you have it way down at the bottom. Yeah, but That's because I like all of them seeing movies. The closest one that like Thor the Dark World is the only one that I'd be like, I don't think I really like this one that much. All the other ones I think are good. There's enough in there that's enjoyable. Even if it's a bad recipe, they poured enough syrup on top of it that it's you can still eat it. Or it's like a delicious bowl of ice cream that someone poured nuts on. It's like, okay, I want to work around the nuts to get to it. So people get mad at me all the time about my thoughts on Guardians of the Galaxy 2, which I don't think is very good, or I have issues with. I do think it's good. It's like a delicious bowl of ice cream that they poured nuts on it. I don't want nuts in my ice cream, and there's a bunch of nuts in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. But as for the Incredible Hulk, which I'm supposed to be talking about right now, it's a good movie. I think it's good. It's just not great. It's not trying to be a home run. It doesn't have the ambitions of like life-changing, world-changing, save the universe stuff. It's just a guy trying to cure himself. Along the way, someone's trying to catch him and stop him, and then we get a boss fight at the end. Boom, end credits roll. So it's good. It's not great. And as for iconic, there's a couple shots in here that are pretty iconic where he's just, some of that stuff in there. Don't quite look like a CGI monster yet, but you get some of the iconic shots, but you don't get true great iconic movie out of this one. So yeah, there you go. So with all that said, coming in at number 1 is the one that you were probably guessing, especially based off what I said earlier in this video. Coming in at number 1 is going to be no movie Mark Ruffalo. His take on the character and what they've figured out how to do with the character. And I think that's the key thing. As much as I like Mark Ruffalo, I like what he's brought to the table and the dynamic he has with the other actors, I think a lot of the credit just more so goes to, I don't know if it's Kevin Feige or Joss Whedon were the one that kind of cracked the code of being like, the Hulk in movie sense with what we're doing, the nature of the character for this world needs to be put in groups of people. He has to have other leads around him to make his character work in a narrative structure that's more ambitious than just the Incredible Hulk movie. And that's what you see. Like putting him in Thor Ragnarok gives the opportunity to do a little bit of this Planet Hulk type story while still having a central narrative of Thor that's Shakespearean and epic and world-ending and apocalyptic. But you can do that because Hulk is put in Thor's movie, not because we're telling a lead Hulk story. And whoever came up with that idea, whoever cracked that code, you've made Mark Ruffalo's version the best of the bunch. So as for the Bruce Banner, I think what really works here is that we're seeing him in these groups of people. So he gets to be the smart guy kind of playing off the emotions and stuff that all these people that want to bring the monster out of him to be the hero because they're fighting big bad guys. And that gives him the opportunity to kind of have these layers of depths of the pain of having the monster inside of you and knowing the damage it causes and what having to actually carry the hurt and the pain when the Hulk goes too far, when the Hulk does something wrong. That gives his Bruce Banner all these extra little interesting layers. And likewise, putting him in these big grandiose stories with Tony Stark, you get to have him as the scientist doing things. Where you just have him on the run, on the road, it limits the number of scientific-y type things you can do. Whereas here, you get some big scientific, he's a brilliant person type stuff. As for our Hulk, once again, they're putting him in big, gigantic blockbuster movies where they can just write into it excuses for having him fighting all of your favorite Avengers, an army of aliens invading the Earth, an army of robots created kind of by Tony Stark. They can write all of that, and it just gives so many great moments to give us a wonderful Hulk scenarios and smashing buildings and battles and all that fun stuff. General quality, once again, the general idea here is that they're using him right as this side character, as the muscle character, as the scientist character in the story that can be run by other characters, which makes for a place where he can shine and bring what he brings best to the table, whether that's Bruce Banner's smarts and lack of comfort inside of himself, or the Hulk's just utter destruction and brainlessness can go on while we still have a lead actor on screen in the other characters. And as for iconic, certainly there's iconic moments, and the movies are iconic. I think history will tell how we view kind of a CGI Mark Ruffalo as an iconic character in and of himself. What do you do with something like that? And what do we think about that? Because I don't identify the Hulk in these movies the way I identify like Andy Serkis as Caesar. I think Caesar. I think Andy Serkis, just all the way. That is Andy Serkis I'm seeing giving a performance on screen. When I see this Hulk that's Mark Ruffalo, I see a bunch of guys in computer going, programming the Hulk to do things, and you get his facial expressions and stuff, but I just don't in any sort of way put it in the same category that I put like an Andy Serkis type performance. And for that reason, I just have a hard time seeing it as iconic of a performance because it's guys doing this in a room somewhere. So there you have it. That is my take on the Hulk. So, and which ones is where. So remember, put it down in the comment section. Tell me favorite Bruce Banner, favorite Hulk, best in quality, most iconic, and rank them all together. Tell me all that fun stuff. Hey, and if you're new to my channel, please consider clicking that subscribe button. I do movie reviews, TV reviews, ranking videos, kind of like this one you're watching right now. But the key thing is I don't want to just talk about the Hulk. I want to talk about the Hulk with you. So join me down in the comment section. Let's have a lively discussion, and thank you so much for watching.